This is Christina Fiore of MedPage Today. A new study reports a very tentative link between bladder cancer and N-nitroso compounds found in processed meats. For context on the study, I turned to Dr. Shilajit Kundu, Chief of Urologic Oncology at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. I asked him whether the results provide sufficient evidence to stay away from processed meats.
Well, I think evidence from this study would suggest that low to moderate amounts or even higher than moderate amounts of red meat or processed meats were not associated with an increased risk of bladder cancer, at least in this population. Of course, extremely high ranges or at least extremely high amounts of red meat or processed meats were associated with a very modest increased risk of bladder cancer in this study. However, I think data from this study as well as previous studies are mixed, and I don't think it would be safe, or I don't think it would be appropriate to say that we should completely cut out red meat or processed meats entirely from our diet.
Do you think that this relationship, well, the very subtle relationships that we're seeing, were potentially mediated by an overall unhealthy diet effect?
I think absolutely it could be. We clearly don't understand all the mechanisms that processing and what chemicals and the effects of chemicals in our body are doing. What I do know is that avoiding extremes of any particular type of food, including processed meats and red meats, is reasonable, and moderation does seem to be the best policy, and that's, I think, what this study shows as well.
Okay, and what about the fact that the bladder seems to be particularly vulnerable to other environmental exposures that can lead to cancer?
Well, the bladder represents, the urinary tract represents an avenue by which the body removes toxins and byproducts of metabolism that are both good and bad. So you can imagine that if a substance, a chemical, nitrates, red meats, things like that, if they are bad for you, or things we don't even know about yet, that the accumulation of urine within the bladder over time and exposure to the urinary lining of the bladder could expose the bladder lining to effects that could be harmful over the long term.
Kundu added that there were 300,000 other patients in the study who did not develop bladder cancer, despite the fact that some of them may also have had high intake of processed meats. For MedPage Today, I'm Christina Fiore.